Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, let's see, where are we now? January 24th. That's right, January 24th, 2017. I'm losing track of time at this point. Everything's falling apart because our president is a complete idiot. Whoops. I don't know how that happened. How did we not see this coming? I don't know. You tell me. Daily Coast Radio is live right now, as you are reminded, all the way from Portland, Maine, where we import our notice about our being live. How does that work? I'm happening down here in Virginia, of course. I don't know. Well, the magic of the internet lets you know. From Portland, Maine, that we're live now. Kagro X, that's me, and that's how you can reach me, by the way, during the show. Don't be afraid to tweet at me, K-A-G-R-O-X. Use that Kagro in the Morning, K-I-T-M hashtag, just to make sure that your comments hang around long enough for me to actually see them. Daily Coast Radio's live now, and I, Kagro X, David Waldman, produce DNA evidence that confirms the president is a dumb baby. And hang on to that phrase. I've certainly made liberal use of it over the past couple of days, and it fits every single time. There's really nothing else to say about it. I tried to come up with something more creative, but it struck me that this just kind of schoolyard idiot insult is the only thing that makes any damn sense for this guy. There's a huge collection of stories today. I don't know if we can get to all of them. We certainly can't read through all of them, but we'll read through one or two. It's really the headlines and the lead paragraphs that tell the story here. The president is a petulant child. A dumb baby is really, there's no other way of saying it. He gets mad about everything, no matter how unimportant, and he can't let it go, and he keeps going, and he's supposed to be governing the country. He's not going to be able to do it. And I'm not certain whether it's a great idea to just keep him distracted and allow other awful people that he's surrounded himself with to do the governing, or it might be that if you get him super angry, not only is he constantly distracted, but he won't let anybody else touch the buttons and pull the gears. I'm going to do it. I'll fix this. He's so angry. And, I don't know. It's worrisome. I don't know how long it'll last. It may kill him at some point. that will call an end to things. That would be a great relief, I think, to members of Congress who are deathly afraid of saying anything about it, Democrat or Republican. Very few members of Congress are willing to say, yeah, there's something seriously wrong with him. But it's creeping up in headlines, opinion pieces, and certainly online discussion. There's just no way around it. Our president is mentally unstable, possibly disturbed, possibly just mentally ill, and unfit for service. It's just, we don't know what the hell to do with that. We've got all the mechanisms. We've designed ourselves a brilliant system. What we never designed, though, was a way of making politicians, and it all falls to politicians to do something about it, making politicians comfortable with the idea of stepping up and saying someone that the country, for whatever reason, trusted with this position is unfit for it. I mean, you have to stand in front of 100 million voters and say, well, more than that, 120, 130 million voters who actually cast ballots and say some 62 million of you made a grievous error. Maybe you didn't recognize it. Maybe you did, which is even worse. But you voted for someone who's mentally unstable, possibly ill, and cannot handle the job. And, what makes it particularly difficult, I think, is that you have to say, and you liked that, and you loved his style, even though it was pretty clear to most of us that he was insane, or very nearly. So, can't get into clinical terminology. I don't know if insane even counts as clinical terminology anymore, but it's an awfully difficult pill to get people to swallow, and, politicians just aren't going to do it. Unfortunately, that's the only system we gave ourselves. There's still Mother Nature, though, and he may have an aneurysm and drop dead. But no way to know. Because all we know is he's in what is astonishingly excellent health, unless he isn't, in which case, what are you going to do? Thanks, Doc. Speaking of Doc, we don't have Greg Dworkin with us this morning, but we do have his Raft O stories, because you can't help but collect these things. By the way, just to let you know what's going on in the background, I have to work hard to keep it together sometimes in the morning. As you know, Justice Putnam is slaving away on the West Coast at these early hours, making sure everything is working and that the show's running and you get to hear it live. And he sends me little notes, and it's usually just, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Whatever. It's rolling. Go for it. Have a nice show. But, of course, things have changed. And so now I get notes that say things like, well, the show intro is on, but only because 3 to 5 million illegals voted. Yeah, we'll get to that story. And then, of course, levels are 5 by 5. And thank you very much to the one or two folks who took it on themselves to communicate with me to tell me what is the historic origin of the 5 by 5 I don't know what term. I don't know what else to call it. I've already forgotten. I read it and I kept it. No, there was some very good explanations. Thank you very much for filling in. I always enjoy learning those sorts of tidbits of trivia and information. Levels, though, are 5 by 5, he says, in Cyrillic, too. So that means they can hear us in Russia. Can you hear me now? I hope not, I guess. All right. Where to begin? Well, let's start with Greg's roundup of stories, because I'm certain that they'll get to some or all of what we put aside. Pocket has plenty of it. I mentioned to you Justice's joke about 3 to 5 million illegals voting, and you'll recognize that as the idiotic conspiracy theory about illegal votes during the campaign having cost, quote unquote, cost Donald Trump the popular vote. That was something his supporters insisted, something that he insisted early on after the November results. I would have won the popular vote too, had it not been for the 3 to 5 million illegal votes cast in the election. And it's something he has not dropped. He eventually was forced to drop, at least publicly, disavow the birtherism. It didn't work very well. I mean, he was the king of birtherism for quite a long time. Whatever happened to Orly Tates, by the way? Is she not in this administration? Is she alive? Someone check on her. Welfare check on Orly Tates, please. And if she's alive, I don't know. I was going to say push her down the stairs, but don't do that. It's awful, and we don't stoop to that level. And I didn't even have anything in my throat right then. Just kidding. Anyway, so he's repeating the lies in a context which makes it ever more troubling. It was childish and stupid to repeat after the election. No doubt about it. And then after it being debunked, to repeat it again is even worse. I mean, and maybe we'll say approaching dumb baby level. But now we're here. Full-blown dumb baby. He hosted the bipartisan congressional leadership. That's what they call it when the leaders of both parties and often of both houses of Congress go to visit. They call that the bipartisan congressional leadership. I don't know if that's even really a functioning term anymore. People still use it. It just doesn't make any damn sense. I mean, in the House, there's Democrats and they have leadership, no doubt about that. Nancy Pelosi's no joke. It's just that it doesn't mean anything in particular. You inform the other side what you're going to do. How am I going to run roughshod over you? And then in the Senate, well, okay, they have a little bit more leverage. Anyway, he had them over to the White House, and apparently he spent the first 10 minutes, he spent the first 10 minutes like I do on the show. So I'm mentally unstable and unfit for the presidency as well. But I think I could overcome it. If I were handed the presidency, I would probably bear down and study and get serious about things. But I haven't been. But he spent the 10 minutes speaking about what he knows. I mean, I guess he was trying to find his footing and get comfortable, which is what I'm usually doing with my 10 minutes. But his subject never changes. 10 minutes haranguing them about the campaign. And remember when I had all them rallies and people came and they cheered for me? That was awesome. Just like Chris Farley used to do. And in addition, he slipped in that all these people telling you that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, it's all nonsense. I really won the popular vote as well. If she hadn't had the 3 to 5 million illegal votes, you wouldn't be able to say that about me. So it's all your fault and something. So duly noted, I guess, by the entire American media, everybody thinks he's borderline crazy or just completely has blown through the border. Interesting that he has not been able to keep a secure border between sanity and insanity, and he's busted through or tunneled under or catapulted himself over, depending on whether or not there's a wall or a fence or kind of a little bit of both on the border between the two. It's all over the place. I certainly put together a small collection in Pocket, but let's take a look at what Greg has sent me. Let's see. First of all, let's see. There's a couple of different things. There's a Bloomberg piece on why Trump's staff is lying. Maybe we need to get to the fact that they're doing it first and then get to the why. And then a couple of his own tweets. And he mentions not only follows up on the Trump as chaos agent theme, but also Trump's mental status makes an appearance in all this. What else has he got here? Oh, he's definitely got the Washington Post piece. Everybody's tweeting about the Washington Post piece, and I can read it, and I'll tell you why I subscribed to the Washington Post. That will disappoint some of you, but I warned you that this was going to happen. There's many problems with the Washington Post, many problems with the New York Times, but the fact that I rely on their writing for this show can't be denied. And ultimately, I decided it's ridiculous for me to ask listeners to the show to support our work if I wasn't supporting their work. You know what I mean? They do some terrible things, and I can't pick and choose which part I support, but they do some mediocre things as well, and I read those on the air. And then they do some fantastic things, and sometimes those break through in the air too. And sometimes they are overarching themes for the show for several months in a row, and it's unfair. Those people produce those pieces. They work hard on them. They make mistakes. I make mistakes. I do terrible things. Yes, I got a nice note yesterday about how nice it is that I would acknowledge how ignorant I am about Canada. Of course, they were hoping for better and that I would know more about Canada. One day we should examine that. I don't have any idea in the world why Americans would be ignorant of Canada. I mean, yes, relatively speaking, certainly by comparison to the United States, it's a minor player in world affairs, and it's probably by design. They don't mind keeping a low profile there, and it's wise of them to do so. But in the age of, international terrorism, let's say, for those reasons, keeping their own people safe is a priority and ought to be. But, I mean, they're our biggest trading partner. They speak the same language. Yes, they're francophones. Isn't that the right terminology? But French-speaking Canadians, yes. But they speak, in most cases, I think, I imagine there's some holdouts, but I would imagine that they're pretty fluent in their English as well. I don't see how they couldn't be. They're annoyed that when people aren't fluent in French, but still, they recognize the realities of this. And huge trading partners, similar in approach to government, generally speaking, though they've had some very different outcomes. Friendly. What else? I mean, it's the place where everybody says they're going to go if things go terribly wrong in the United States. How can we not know more about who they are and what they do? I don't know. I can't explain it, except maybe it's one of those things like, have you ever lived in a city somewhere or a town or an area and realized when people come to visit in particular and you take them to the local sites or something that's famous in the area and you realize, I never go here unless it's a restaurant, something like that. But yeah, I lived in Washington, D.C. area for a long time. And, I think I probably lived in the D.C. area, both inside D.C. and within striking distance, 25 years before I went to visit the Washington Monument and go up to the top. Things like that, right? You drive by them you just ignore it until you say, what the hell am I doing? Why am I not paying attention? So sorry, Canada. It's a good way to start. How about that? See, I needed 10 minutes to get my footing too. Anyway, everybody's talking about this Washington Post piece, which I can go over with you. This probably deserves, if not a thorough read through, then certainly a close look. Auto-playing video. That one of the pitfalls of being a subscriber, I guess. Oh, look at that. It's not even auto-playing video. It's just like what? Like a repeating loop of the first couple seconds of the video without it actually playing, so that it's one of those moving pictures like a Harry Potter newspaper. Isn't that wonderful? Technology has brought us magic. Ancient fictional magic. Anyway, this is the piece that everybody's talking about in the politics section. The first days inside Trump's White House. Fury, tumult, and a reboot. Not tumulty. She's not on this one, but tumult. And a reboot. I don't know what the reboot is supposed to be. Ashley Parker, Philip Rucker, and Matea Gold are on this piece. Let's see. Oh, by the way, before I lose track of this stuff, okay. You know what? I'll hang on to some of these comments and we'll go back to it. President Trump has just returned to the White House on Saturday from his final inauguration event, a tranquil interfaith prayer service, when the flashes of anger began to build. He's a scary guy. Trump turned on the television, don't let him do that, to see a jarring juxtaposition. Oh, where's my jarring juxtaposition music? There we go. That seems like maybe the best. Well, I guess we could use boring. Here's that one. Anyway, a jarring juxtaposition. Massive demonstrations around the globe. Yawn. Protesting his day-old presidency, and footage of the sparser crowd at his inauguration with large patches of white, empty space on the mall. As his press secretary Sean Spicer was still unpacking boxes in his spacious new West Wing office, Trump grew increasingly and visibly enraged. Yikes. Pundits were dissing his turnout. The National Park Service had retweeted a photo unfavorably comparing the size of his inauguration crowd with the one that attended Barack Obama's swearing-in ceremony in 2009. A journalist had misreported that Trump had removed the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office, and celebrities at the protests were denouncing the new commander-in-chief. Madonna even referenced blowing up the White House. That was probably unwise. But she's white, so, it might work out for her. We'll see. And a celebrity. That's the big deal. Yes, and by the way, that's an interesting term there. Misreported that Trump had removed the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the White House, or rather from the Oval Office. And I forget who it was that did that, but I mean, immediately Trump supporters were on it like 5-year-olds. We've been over this before, where a 5-year-old might react to your saying, we'll go for ice cream later today, and then let's say you fall down and break your leg, and you got to go to the emergency room, and so you don't make it out there for ice cream. You lied about the ice cream. Well, let me explain to you about lying and, the other variants of it. I didn't lie. I meant to go for ice cream. I just broke my leg. This reporter was apparently took note of the fact that the Martin Luther King bust had moved, looked around the West Wing offices for it, or the Oval Office for it, and didn't spot it, and then reported that it had been removed from the Oval Office, which to their observation it had, but according to the Trump White House, it was in fact still in the Oval Office, had simply been moved, and the guy had missed it. I don't know where you miss it. There's no corners, of course, in the Oval Office, and it would be, I think, probably relatively difficult to miss if you were looking for it, but who knows? It was probably packed, and there was lots of photography equipment in there. It might have been behind something. Or, with this Trump White House, it might have been moved out of the Oval Office, and then when they got called on it, they quick moved it back in and said the reporter was lying. Anyway, moving on with this article here, Trump's advisors suggested that he could push back in a simple tweet. Great suggestion. Thomas J. Barack Jr., a Trump confidant and chairman of the Presidential Inaugural Committee, offered to deliver a statement addressing the crowd size. But Trump was adamant, aides said, over the objection of his aides and advisors, who urged him to focus on policy and the broader goals of his presidency. The new president issued a decree. He wanted a fiery public response, and he wanted it to come from his press secretary. Wow. We'll see whether any more description crops up in this article, but I've also heard elsewhere in the ensuing hours and days that, well, first we heard, Spicer gave just a ridiculous performance. It was roundly panned by everybody who saw it. And in fact, CNN did, in fact, decide only to air it late, delayed, because they were afraid from the start that it was going to be BS from top to bottom, and it was. So they looked pretty wise on that. And then I remember hearing reports that Trump was dissing Spicer's performance, and the assumption was that, Spicer had gone out and freelanced this thing and said such dumb stuff, and Trump thought he looked like an idiot for doing it. And then it turned out a couple hours later, no, Trump was angry that he wasn't lying hard enough. The man's nuts are orange. The man is crazy. We should just say that as often as possible. I guess he wanted a fiery public response, and I guess it wasn't fiery enough. Spicer's resulting statement, to return to the article, delivered in an extended shout and brimming with falsehoods, underscores the extent to which the turbulence and competing factions that were the hallmark of Trump's campaign have been transported to the White House. The broader power struggles within the Trump operation have touched everything from the new administration's communications shop to the expansive role of the president's son-in-law to the formation of Trump's political organization. At the center, as always, is Trump himself, whose ascent to the White House seems to have only heightened his acute sensitivity to criticism. This account of Trump's tumultuous first days in office comes from interviews with nearly a dozen senior White House officials and other Trump advisors and confidants, some of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity, to describe private conversations and moments. There's nothing more important to these guys. He has collected a bunch of people who are just like him. Being a source to the press is more important to these guys than anyone on the planet. And that's really kind of true very often for almost everybody in a White House, and particularly in a new White House when they're trying to establish who's where in the pecking order. And I guess that should be acknowledged. But these guys, I think, just have that illness a little bit more acutely than most. Again, returning now, breaking off the commentary. By most standards, Spicer's statement Saturday did not go well. He appeared tired and nervous in an ill-fitting gray pinstripe suit. He publicly gave faulty facts and figures, which he said were provided to him by the Presidential Inaugural Committee, that prompted a new round of media scrutiny. Many critics thought Spicer went too far and compromised his integrity. He did. But in Trump's mind, Spicer's attack on the news media was not forceful enough. The president was also bothered that the spokesman read, at times haltingly, from a printed statement, which is what I'm doing. Trump has been resentful, even furious, at what he views as the media's failure to reflect the magnitude of his achievements, which are none. And he feels demoralized that the public's perception of his presidency so far does not necessarily align with his own sense of accomplishment. That's never going to happen. Nobody can align with his sense of accomplishment. On Monday, Spicer returned to the lectern crisply dressed and appearing more comfortable as he parried questions from the press corps. That is, not answered them. There is this constant theme to undercut the enormous support that he has, he told reporters, and I think that it's just unbelievably frustrating when you're continually told it's not big enough, it's not good enough, you can't win. Must have been awfully frustrating for Hillary Clinton, though, don't you think? Unlike other senior aides, Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, Chief Strategist Stephen K. Bannon, they're giving the whole names now, Counselor Kellyanne Conway, and Senior Advisor Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. He's doomed to ever have, he's doomed to be his son-in-law, for one thing. But everybody's going to note that. Everyone loves pulling that one out. For some reason, that's really, blindingly offensive in many ways to a lot of people. I'm not terribly disturbed by it. I'm used to it. As a Giants fan, they, for like 10 years, they kept pointing out that the Chris Snee, the center on the offensive line, it was the coach's son-in-law. You couldn't avoid it. There were like 3 or 4 things that commentators said every single game. You can't call Chris Snee's name without noting that he's the coach's son-in-law. Anyway, both of them are gone now, the coach and the center. Okay. Anyway, during the campaign, I'm sorry. I left off at the president's son-in-law. Spicer does not enjoy a close and long-standing personal relationship with Trump. That's interesting too, by the way, right? Just let me put that back out there again. Unlike other senior aides, Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, Chief Strategist Stephen Bannon, Counselor Kellyanne Conway, and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, Spicer doesn't enjoy a close and long-standing personal relationship with Trump. To be honest with you, I need to stop there because neither does Reince Priebus, Stephen Bannon, or Kellyanne Conway. I mean, I don't know when Spicer came on. Spicer worked for someone else in the early portion of the primaries, but so did Kellyanne Conway, and Bannon only really came on board kind of late in the situation, and Priebus even later. I don't know what to say. He doesn't have a long-standing personal relationship with anybody there except possibly Jared Kushner, and that relationship isn't really all that long-standing in the grand scheme of things. I mean, for a 70-year-old guy, he's surrounded by advisors that he's known for less than a year. I've certainly had any close relationship with for less than a year, with the exception of Jared Kushner, who he's only known, I guess, as long as he's been dating/married to Ivanka. Where are the president's close personal friends? The answer is, of course, they're holed up mostly in the Trump buildings around the world, running gambling rings or blowing their trust funds or whatever, and or being the number one king of all fun, like Stewie Rara, and doing God knows what, and making sex tapes. Apparently, he doesn't have close personal friends that I'm aware of, but I'm not a close personal friend of his, so I don't know. It seems like he's got an ever-evolving sequence of, idiots who want his money or just like hanging out with him to get close to Miss Universe contestants or something. I don't know. Who do you think is the president's closest personal friend of long standing? You got a name? I don't know. Okay. So let's see. Back to the article here. During the campaign, Trump was suspicious of both Priebus and Spicer, who ran the Republican National Committee and were seen as more loyal to the party than to its nominee. Some privately wonder whether Conway is now trying to undermine Spicer. Certainly could be. But again, Conway, like Spicer, worked for somebody else. And so I guess Spicer was at the RNC, but Kellyanne Conway worked directly for, I don't even remember which of the idiots running against him. Was it Cruz? Who knows? Anyway, but every once in a while people trot out her early statements on behalf of whatever candidate she was working with, pointing out things like, where's the goddamn tax returns from this guy? Anyway, unbelievable. But now that sticks in my craw now, that in the middle of this Washington Post article is this assertion that Spicer doesn't enjoy a close and long-standing personal relationship like these other people who also don't. I don't know how that even made it in the article. Where's the editors? I don't know. Deadlines. All right, so it's a little mistake. As Trump thought about staffing his administration following his surprise victory, he hesitated over selecting Spicer as White House press secretary. He did not see Spicer as particularly telegenic. Probably true. That he thinks so. I mean, I don't know whether he is or he isn't. He doesn't look particularly telegenic, I guess. And he preferred a woman for the position, asking Conway to do it, and also considering conservative commentators Laura Ingraham and Monica Crowley, who ultimately stepped down from an administration job, or bowed out of the possibility of one, because of charges of plagiarism, before settling on Spicer at the urging of Priebus and others. I knew he would want to. I'm sure he was trying to follow the Fox News formula there. Give me a blonde woman. Anyway, he was wise to stay away from Conway. I think she's too grating. Anyhow, yet if there was any doubt over the weekend about Spicer's standing with the president, it seemed to have been erased by his performance Monday, at least for the moment. Trump told his senior team that he was pleased with Spicer's more confident and relaxed turn at the lectern. His very first briefing as White House press secretary was a tour de force, Conway said. I guess really The second, he engaged the media. He was respectful and firm. He talked about accountability on a two-way street. He gave facts. He broke news in terms of what the president was doing. I don't know if I would agree with that assessment, but it's Kellyanne Conway's, so what's the point? Tensions and internal power struggles have plagued other parts of Trump's fledgling orbit too. Fledgling orbit. Never mind. Efforts to launch an outside group supporting Trump's agenda have stalled amid fighting between Kushner loyalists, such as the campaign's data and digital strategist Brad Parscale, remember him, and conservative donor Rebecca Mercer. According to people familiar with the tensions, major disputes include who would control the data the outside group would use, with Mercer advocating for Cambridge Analytica. Ooh, I have some more information about them put away somewhere if I can find it. A firm in which her father is invested, and that's why she wants them to have it, interestingly enough. And who would control the lucrative contracts with vendors, these people said. Two people close to the transition also said a number of Trump's most loyal campaign aides have been alarmed by Kushner's efforts to elbow aside anyone he perceives as a possible threat to his role as Trump's chief consigliere. At one point during the transition, Kushner had argued internally against giving Conway a White House role, these two people said. Because Conway operates outside of the official communications department, some aides grumble that she can go rogue when she pleases, offering her own message and promoting herself as much as the president. One suggested that Conway's office on the second floor of the West Wing, as opposed to one closer to the Oval Office, was a sign of her diminished standing. And usually it is in these petty things. Though Conway took over the workspace previously occupied by Valerie Jarrett, who had been Obama's closest advisor, the confidant dismissively predicted that Trump would rarely climb a flight of stairs. And that's probably true. Yet that assessment may misunderstand the Trump-Conway relationship. The president admires her dogged and fearless defenses of him and respects her on-camera ability to dodge, diffuse, and deflect whatever comes her way. According to numerous Trump advisors, on the eve of his inauguration, Trump called Conway on stage at a black-tie dinner to sing her praises. Trump watched Sunday as Conway sparred with NBC's Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. Some Trump allies were unsettled by her performance, but not the president, according to one official. He called Vice President Pence to rave about how she handled questions from Todd, whom Trump mocked on Twitter as sleepy eyes, and called Conway to offer his congratulations. Trump was perturbed that the media focused on two words from Conway's interview: alternative facts. Dang, you just about ruined it with that one. Conway is arguably Trump's most recognizable aide, which has caused her to receive threats against her life. She has been assigned a Secret Service detail, according to someone with detailed knowledge of the situation. And perhaps the clearest sign of where the administration's power center resides, the Big Four, Bannon, Conway, Kushner, and Priebus, stood in the front row at Sunday afternoon's swearing-in ceremony for senior staffers in the White House's East Room. Conway herself said that while the advisors sometimes disagree, rumors of dissension are overblown. We're a cohesive unit, she said. The senior team exhibits many of the characteristics President Trump has always valued: cohesion, collaboration, high energy, and high impact. Some Trump insiders have suggested tension between Conway and Priebus, but she said, that could not be further from the truth. I really respect the job that Rence is doing most of all, Conway said. He has a very good way of choosing battles wisely, which is a hallmark of a real leader and manager. Conway said she now hopes to limit her television appearances. Instead, she is taking on an expanded portfolio, which will include healthcare and veterans issues. Why? I don't know. And Pence, for whom she has worked for years as a pollster, is also expected to carve out more substantive responsibilities for her. Longtime GOP fundraiser and advisor Fred Malek said that a president benefits from having advisors with distinct perspectives, noting the Ed Meese and Jim Baker debates in the Reagan White House. You want to have a robust discussion, and you want to have competing points of view debated with vigor, Malek said. To the extent that that results in bruised feelings, sometimes, so be it. And thus ends the piece most discussed this morning, and I am most disgusted by it. So let's catch up with some of the other comments flying by, and some lingering, some not. Let's see. Oh, look at this. Well, here's something that has nothing to do with anything that I've mentioned today, but certainly one of the longtime themes of the show. Rebecca Romans noting an article out of every town for gun sense. Is this who's putting this one out? Florida gun murders have risen 32% since the state passed its deadly shoot first law. And as she points out, yeah, who could have predicted this? Yeah. Got a couple of comments here from Ricky May, who told us all about her having or being a resident of Prince Edward Island yesterday. That sent me reminiscing about things, and Scott Anderson as well, who also had a honeymoon elsewhere in Canada, but in a beautiful spot in Ontario, was it? I don't want to give it away because it's a secret location that he might take. He could tell you if he wants. But looked like a beautiful spot. Sent me some nice pictures or a link to the tourism web page there. It just sort of, he felt like, hey, I'll share you a story for you. I did the same thing. I sort of closed my eyes and stuck a pin in a map of North America to pick our honeymoon vacation spot. That could have gone terribly, by the way, right? Not in Canada, but I mean, imagine you could have dropped the pin anywhere and you would have really been struggling for things to do. But I guess on a honeymoon, if you got a nice hotel room, everything's fine, right? Let's see. Ricky was just commenting on 1, she thinks the dumb baby fits just fine. 2, well, let's see. The Russians are listening. She's noting to Justice Putnam. Holy crap. Okay. And 3, we, the Canadians, I suppose she means, keep a low profile because we live next door to a loudmouth. LOL, just kidding. No, you're not. It's true. Let's see. A couple other comments as well. Oh, I see Armando jumping in here. Roger Stone is Trump's longest standing political friend. That could be true. Although I'm really interested in who are his long-standing personal friends, but I guess that kind of counts. I think they probably mesh on both a personal and political level. They're both, in addition to being totally amoral nutcases, they are. Roger Stone is a famous swinger, and I think they probably swapped models once in a while as well. I'm just guessing. All right. Where else have we gone wrong in life, I guess, is what we're looking to round up here. Let's see. Oh, what else do we have from Greg? Okay, there's the why Trump staff is lying stuff. I'll run down the list and we'll just make note of what's happening in the world, and we'll pick and choose where we go from there. ProPublica piece on the Trump administration's imposition of a freeze on EPA grants and contracts. That was big news. I saw a lot of people talking about that as well. Plus, of course, the hiring freeze, and lots of people wondering, how do you do a hiring freeze on the federal government at that moment when you're about to fill thousands of federal jobs with your supporters? I guess they're exempt from the freeze. I don't really know what the terms of the freeze are. Nobody does. That's one of the other big problems. He's constantly telling the press that he's been signing executive orders to do amazing things, no doubt. But not showing anybody what those executive orders actually are, at least for some considerable amount of time. And as a matter of fact, over at the Federal Register, I still don't see those. Maybe they don't print the executive orders over there. And I don't know whether, I never used to check in on executive orders, but where is this stuff? The first one, the one about the Affordable Care Act, that he signed on the day of his inauguration. That was people made a big deal out of that one. And, but again, the text of it wasn't available for an hour or more. And then when it finally became available, it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that it was kind of a nonsense executive order. And not that it didn't have an impact, but that it was essentially reminding department heads who don't exist to this point, because we're still there's been only 3 Senate confirmations of appointees in the Trump administration so far. Mattingly at Defense, Kelly at Homeland Security, and last night, what's his name? Pompeo as CIA director after a 3-hour floor debate and a vote of, I don't know what it was, but as I recall, there were some 14, 15 Democrats voting with the majority voting yes on Pompeo's appointment as CIA director. And I guess we ought to spend some time on why that's possibly so troubling and why Democrats might vote yes on it anyway, just to, complete the story. But anyway, there are no agency heads out there to receive these orders, but the executive order on the Affordable Care Act was, by the way, in case you never read the Affordable Care Act, many decisions require or hinge on the discretion of agency heads. They have some leeway in how they're going to interpret different parts of the act or implement different parts of the act within their departments and how they'll formulate day-to-day operational policy around the broad goals of the Affordable Care Act. And they can do some serious damage. The bill was designed, of course, with the idea in mind that you would have department heads who would want to implement this thing versus department heads who would not want to or who would want to repeal or dismantle or undermine it in some way. But the power to do that existed already. So the executive order doesn't create any new power or rescind any old powers for department heads. It simply reminds them, you work for the Trump administration, or you will whenever you get into office. And so, for instance, when a state requests a waiver of some kind, if the waiver would undermine the national cohesion and integrity of the Affordable Care Act, where an Obama administration department head might deny the waiver, you would be instructed to approve the waiver so that you could ruin as much as possible. On the other hand, if it were a waiver that would make it more efficient to deliver, let's say, Medicaid support to the poor of your state, to grant that waiver, you are instructed not to grant that waiver so that fewer people get help and more people die. That's basically what it was. So yes, it can have an impact, and yes, it can even ruin some things. But it basically all he said was, remember, whenever you get into office, you can make decisions. And I would like you to make the decisions such that it undermines the Affordable Care Act to the maximum extent possible. That was basically what that executive order was. But we only saw it like an hour or so afterwards because the people were chasing it down. They don't know yet at the White House, the Trump White House, how to disseminate that information. On the executive orders page at whitehouse.gov, there exists only that Affordable Care Act order at the moment. There is no display of any of the, what did he say, 3 that he supposedly signed yesterday. And I'm telling you, those, I'm sure they'll eventually show up, but there's no reason in the world for anyone in any capacity anywhere, inside the government, outside the government, executive branch, legislative branch, judicial branch, anything, to take this administration's word for anything ever. People have always said that. They say the president's a liar, his administration is full of liars, whoever the president is. But never before has there been a situation where there's actually serious reason to doubt that a document that the president holds up to the photographers for them to see his signature on exists, much less says what he says it says upon further examination. Where's the executive orders? Where are these 3 awesomely important things that he had to sign and show everybody yesterday? They're still nowhere to be found on the White House website, and that may be a matter of they never hired anybody to make it their job. Yeah, when I sign an executive order, they'll go in this basket, and then you put them on the website. They don't have that person yet. They don't care to. I'm sure they're going to change the way some things work, but they don't care. The fact that they're not transparent, the fact that they're not providing information to people doesn't bother them. Certainly their fans don't care. Armando, can you come on and discuss the executive orders? I'll just ask it that way. He's asking me, can I come on? But I'm going to make it sound like I'm requesting him to come on because that's very flattering. People like that. Yeah. All right. I already blew it. Yes, absolutely. You can come on to discuss those. And why not? And we'll discuss that and a couple of other things as well. If you've seen the executive orders, great. I didn't go searching around for them. I was just basically looking around to see whether the regular channels of distribution were getting them, and they're not. By the way, I also read somewhere yesterday that they closed down the White House switchboard. They don't have live people answering them anymore. There's a recorded message that says if you want to get a message to the White House, go on Facebook or post it online somewhere. Anywhere. They don't have a page. Just go do some things. Go talk to the wind and see whether it carries it to my ears. It's really and truly bizarre. Anyway, I do recommend that, in particular, members of Congress and particularly members in the Senate literally question everything that comes out of the White House. When a messenger comes and hands over documents to the Secretary of the Senate and the Secretary of Senate announces in open session that they've got a written communication from the President, your attitude as a Democratic senator should be, says who? Prove it. Open it up. I think that procedurally speaking, the chair might just be empowered by Senate rules to simply accept the message, but that doesn't mean you can't interrupt things. And as a point of senatorial privilege, have an hour debate over whether or not that ought to be the normal procedure. And you say, okay, you say you've received the message from the president in writing. I don't want you like putting it on the table here. I want to open it up and make sure that it's there, that it's signed, that it has something, that it says something. And I don't really want to accept them as a matter of course anymore. I don't think that's a rule they're going to be able to change. Although I'd love to have that debate and explore it. I don't see any reason. Also, by the way, just for those of you who are experienced forgers out there, why not send your own messages from the President of the United States? It's an alternative fact. Get yourself some White House stationery. Take a look at what it looks like. See if Trump is using the same stuff as they used to. And Photoshop his signature on there and send some messages to the Senate nominating, let's say, somebody completely different for a cabinet position. And see what happens. I think that would make an interesting question. What if 2, 3, 4 purported nominations for Secretary of State showed up on the desk of the President of the Senate? One's Rex Tillerson, one's Vermin Supreme, one's Armando, See what happens. How do they decide? I don't know. I imagine they have a vote. Well, good. That burns time. That's what I'm interested in doing. Okay, Armando, how you doing? The executive orders. What's going on?
You picked me into wanting to talk about these executive orders.
Okay.
I don't think they interest you that much. I thought they were interesting on a couple of levels.
You've seen them.
You and I had an extended discussion about the first one on the 20th about the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
Which I know some are trying to say, well, this weakens the mandate. I'm like, So I sort of saw it as what you said was reminder, hey, you've got this discretion, use it.
Yeah, and I guess it could be used to say, well, okay, in my discretion as IRS commissioner, I'm not going to enforce the individual mandate penalties against people. Is that what people were trying to say?
That's what they were trying to build up. I don't even think Trump thought about it that much, to be honest with you. Trump didn't, and I don't know if the person who did thought about it. I think that was trying to make something out of nothing. In essence, I think all four of what the so-called executive orders that I know about are basically not really executive orders as to what we mean. They don't really make an order that applies to everyone, which a president can do in certain circumstances. Remember, when can a president, quote, make law through an executive order? Well, he can do it when there's space in that the Congress hasn't legislated, or pursuant to the legislation which empowers the president to create, quote, regulations or whatnot, or exercise his prosecutorial discretion, as Obama did with regard to the immigration law. none of the four I saw were that. The ACA, we've discussed, you and I, and it's basically, hey, you have this power, use it. He could have picked up a phone. But as you told me on Twitter, we didn't have anybody to call because there is no Secretary of Health and Human Services yet.
So it's a blog post is what it is. Whenever you are finally in office and you happen to read the presidential blog about what I should be doing, it'll be there for you. You can't call them, and there's no voicemail even set up for them. They don't exist. The only departments with heads are Homeland Security and Defense. And I guess the CIA has it.
Now the CIA.
That's
Those
not
are
really
the
a
three.
department, but it is kind of cabinet level.
Right. And similarly, the much ballyhooed TPP, it wasn't even styled as an executive order. It's called a memorandum to the U.S. Trade Representative, who also doesn't exist at this time.
Right, true.
To notify the depository and the signatories to the TPP agreement that we're not going to do that.
Yes. No, we're not in it yet. So that's right. It was billed as a withdrawal from TPP, but we're not in it.
We're not in TPP
but still.
because we never ratified it. In fact,
Yes.
TPP has never gone into effect because not enough countries have ratified it.
Oh, is that right?
The basic formula is 85% GDP of the signatories. It's an interesting construct. In essence, I think it's built to say if the U.S. says go, then basically U.S. plus one may not get there, but just about. I mean, it could be four of them if the United States was in. But the United States isn't. So that effectively kills the TPP for everybody else, I believe. I think it's hard to get to 85% without the United States. We must be a third of the, at least, of the GDP of the TPP nations, probably more. So the formal act of notifying we're no longer trying to ratify this is an act, but it didn't happen. And you don't write a memorandum, you just send a letter. There's no need for that. It was a publicity stunt.
Yeah, all right.
But so was the ACA one. It was also a publicity stunt.
Yes, that was he needed a day one action of some kind. Although, I don't know, he said he had hundreds of day one actions ready to go, and he did.
36, I believe, was the number bandied about.
Oh, I saw maybe. I saw a video yesterday for some reason. I stumbled upon it on YouTube from, what's the Alex Jones thing? The crazy.
InfoWars.
InfoWars. And they had, I don't know, two women sitting at a news-style desk going back and forth about how, it was from months ago, too, how Trump has 200 executive orders that he's going to sign on the first day. I think so. He signed one. That's a pretty good job. He's a low energy guy.
The other thing he did was reimpose the global gag rule on U.S. government officials.
Yes. Right. I'm going to cut regulations 75%. Except actually, the first thing I'm going to do is regulate something else.
Right. So that's actually a real thing. Because the president does have authority, obviously, over everyone else, and he needed to inform his people about this, and he did. No one can now promote any form of birth control overseas, or I guess even domestically in the Trump administration. Birth control pills do not exist. Condoms do not exist. IUDs do not exist. I guess I assume that means the rhythm method doesn't exist either. And of course it really doesn't exist in real life anyway. But
his own erectile dysfunction doesn't exist now either. So that's the upside of it.
Right. So that's actually substantive and terrible. It's a terrible backstep. It tells you that Trump, does Trump care about the global gag rule? In my opinion, no, he doesn't care about that. But there are people around him that do, and since he didn't care, go ahead, do it. That's a lot of the way Trump's going to operate. What does he care about? He cares about getting. Well, we know what he cares about. You've seen what he's cared about for 3 days.
Yeah, stories about
how he's portrayed in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he cares about, or in the media. Crowd sizes. There's just a basic misunderstanding Is Trump a bigot and a racist? All those things. Yes, he is. But first and foremost, he is a Trumpist. He is worried about how Donald Trump is viewed.
Yeah.
That's what he cares about. So I think that the prisms people look at, oh, what does Trump really believe? He doesn't believe anything except, worship Trump. That's the reality.
Yeah.
It's,
to the extent that he has policy, it's, this is the way I feel about things.
This is Paul Krugman tweets from my Time story, I believe. Trump has been resentful, even furious, at what he views as the media's failure to reflect the magnitude of his achievements. And he feels demoralized that the public's perception of his presidency so far does not necessarily align with his own sense of accomplishment.
Yes, that was in the Washington Post piece.
Oh, was it the Washington Post? Okay.
Yeah. So
it is the Washington Post.
Everybody's talking about that piece. Yeah,
and think about
crazy.
that. The guy hasn't done anything, and he couldn't. I mean, I can't even blame him for not having done anything. He's been president for 4 days.
Yeah.
What was he supposed to do in terms of achievements? Nothing yet, really. It's the rare situation where you get to sign a Lilly Ledbetter Act at first day in office because, you had an overwhelming Congress that passed that law before you were sworn in, right. So it was signed, sealed, and delivered for you. Mm-hmm. That isn't available to Trump. I mean, he can't do anything. So what's his accomplishments? I'd say it's one of the great P.T. Barnum acts of all time, but it's been that for 30 years. He's a charlatan. He's a fake. He's not a billionaire. He's not a good businessman. He's not anything. But his historic achievement was convincing people that he was.
Yeah. I mean,
so I don't know. To me, if that's his real achievement, I don't think he's going to like those headlines. So, but no. Today is a day of lessons learned. They'll never be learned. But going back to the executive orders, he's signing. By reporting is telling us he's signing today at 11 a.m.
Yes.
Executive orders overturning the prohibition on the construction of the Keystone Pipeline and the North Dakota Pipeline.
Yeah.
The Keystone Pipeline and the North Dakota Pipeline, which were key activism points of the last few years among activists of various stripes.
Yes.
And they, to their credit, convinced President Barack Obama to act in a way that they thought was proper, i.e. he froze or stopped the Keystone Pipeline, and he froze or stopped the North Dakota Pipeline.
Right.
Great activism.
It was.
All worth nothing now.
Well, it does continue.
All worth nothing now, David. November 8th made all that for naught. You wasted all your energy. What is my point here? And I'm sorry to talk over you. Elections have consequences beyond your activism. You have to turn your activism on any issue. You can't sit and run and spend a year saying they're the same.
Well, yes, okay, I see.
You can't. You just expended enormous amounts of goodwill and energy to stop these two pipeline projects, but you didn't see the importance of the election. They didn't.
Well, that would be, that's
a
relatively
failure
narrow slice
of activism.
Yes, for those who, and it wouldn't be all of them, but for those who were what else can I say besides the most active activists? But those who were actively involved in opposing those pipelines and refused to, say, cast a vote for Hillary Clinton in this, saying they were both
refused
the
to
same anyway.
Say that we have a clear choice here in this election.
But I'm not certain what percentage of activists on those. It's hard to say.
Let me take you one of
the
most notable environmental activists, Bill McKibben.
All right.
Bill McKibben in the election basically acted like they were the same. That is a failure of activism. The fight to defeat Trump was just as important as your protests on the Keystone Pipeline and the North Dakota pipeline. And you didn't see that. Those pipelines now will go forward. You will not stop them. You cannot stop them. Trump is president for 4 years. Those pipelines will be completed, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You wasted your time because you were too pure and too, frankly, stupid to understand that come November 8th, everything you had done was on the line.
Mm.
And you never explained it to your followers. In fact, you denigrated the people who would have been your allies.
Well, I can say...
So everyone, no, David, hey, we're all happy and celebrating. We stopped them. We stopped. You didn't stop a damn thing.
Well, I don't know. I think it may be overbroad, certainly. And I'm also thinking that there's probably some significant differences in the size of that contingent as between the Keystone Pipeline thing, which was more of a... Well, actually, they had a similar dynamic. Both of the pipeline activists, the activist sector for both had like serious, honest-to-God activists who were camping out on the site of the construction to physically block it from happening. And then there was, I send postcards to my members of Congress saying I support those guys' activists, both of which ordinarily are of some value, and for a while they were. And then of course the next question is, well, I don't know how many of which cohort and which pipeline actually really did follow up by voting for someone other than Hillary Clinton, but I'm sure that someone and in some significant numbers they did. But I'm also always hesitant to say activism was a complete waste of time, even though we ended up with a complete nutball who will undo all of the work that they did. That also came close to not happening.
What are you going to have to show for it?
Well, there is that. The bottom line of it is...
What's the achievement?
Yeah, I don't know. The bottom line was they bought enough time for the rest of us to try to carry them, or in some cases drag them kicking and screaming across the finish line by electing Hillary Clinton. That just didn't happen.
There is a disconnect, frankly, a childishness to how to address what they say they care most about.
Yeah, this is always difficult. We went through the same thing, of course, in 2000, but it certainly pays to keep in mind that you're running a tremendous risk when you do this, and people were reminded of it constantly during this campaign, and some people, took it to heart, and some people did not. And the same result obtains, which I think hopefully next time we say, you've done this twice in living memory. Are you really going to do it?
Here's the starkest example. Jill Stein ran third party. Now, would Hillary have gotten a lot more of those votes? Listen, 10,000 of them in Michigan would have won the election in Michigan. It's small numbers that changed things here. Jill Stein was all about the North Dakota pipeline. She went and vandalized something there and got arrested or something. Mm-hmm. She wanted to help the North Dakota pipeline. Frankly, at the end, she should have said, vote for Hillary.
Yeah, I mean...
But she doesn't really care about the North Dakota pipeline, David. She cares about Jill Stein. There's an egotism in some of this that is very Trumpian.
Yes.
Look, I'm putting this more bluntly, I know, than you probably even agree, but I think there's a real narcissism in some of these acts that don't look. Martin Luther King was the greatest activist of our recent history, right?
I can't disagree with that, certainly.
All right.
Okay.
Martin Luther King marched and criticized everyone, but Martin Luther King knew which political party was going to move the ball forward for his goals.
Yes. And that's not to say he didn't hold them to account in some very, very uncomfortable ways.
But he also made clear to his followers who to vote for.
Yeah. Now, somehow Republicans got the impression that meant that truly he was a conservative Republican now that he's dead. As you see that every year. But okay. Yeah. No, there's no doubt about it. He knew which party was going to be moved or movable on that issue, and he made their life super uncomfortable for an extended period of time. But he didn't bother trying that with Republicans because that wasn't happening.
Well, I mean, I understand in some ways your hesitation to embrace my rhetoric on this because, listen, what kind of person does it take to go out to pipelines in the middle of nowhere and protest?
Better ones than me.
Better ones than me. More zealous people than me.
Yeah.
And that zealousness, it's hard to then say, well, now be pragmatic. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to do that. Yeah. But you have to. Again, I looked at Martin Luther King. I mean, he did. You think he had any illusions about what Lyndon Johnson was?
I doubt it. Yeah, the life's full of tough choices. And, for people who aren't actually in political leadership, when tough choices are made, well, I don't want to make those tough choices. I would rather do this. And I understand that. And it's very difficult, and it would be a rare combination to find in the same person, in great numbers, in the same people, the willingness to physically put yourself in the middle of North Dakota in the middle of winter and camp out there, and not to mention the sort of weirdness and intrusiveness that it would take for a, let's say, coastal elite. Let's say there's a most amazingly dedicated, totally pure, but also somehow pragmatic East Coast elite type person. Do they really? I mean, aren't they worried about checking their privilege? They don't want to go and pitch a tent in the middle of North Dakota along with the natives of North Dakota and say, yeah, here I am, and I brought latte. For everybody. I don't know. But it would take a rare person to be able to be the kind of person who would say, I will dedicate myself to this way. And then, when election day comes around, say, well, yeah, but pragmatism leads me to the... Pragmatism says, take the tent down and go home. It's freezing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I really do. And that's sort of...
It would take a rare individual, and it would be awfully difficult to cultivate that. I mean, the kind of mindset that would take to hold that protest together in the middle of nowhere, particularly when they thought they were alone for the longest time, and in the face of police violence and bringing in militarized cops from all over the country to face you down and all of that, and then say, but at the same time, let's be pragmatic deal makers. Your camp will fall apart if you're not 100% dedicated to what you're doing. So yeah, that'd be very, very tough. But on the other hand, as you point out, there were many more people who from afar said they were just as dedicated as the people who were out there. They were just extraordinarily busy. And P.S. I'm voting for someone else.
I never made such a claim. I don't even know enough about either of those issues to, frankly, even have an opinion as to whether what they said about the Keystone and I don't even know. I'm just judging it from what they said their goal was, which was to stop these pipelines.
Yes.
They stopped them. And then on November 8th, and the run-up to November 8th, they helped restart them.
Someone did, if they weren't the same people.
Listen, when you cut down and you went after and you don't make clear to people who agree with you that the choice on the issue that you just dedicated a major portion of your life to for the last years, and you don't say, well, it's just as important now that this person be elected so that all our hard work pays off.
Yeah.
Nobody said that. They needed to say that, David.
Yeah. We'll see whether that lesson gets learned and whether, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen at this point to those pipelines. I mean, the smart bet is they bulldoze
Clara
your
Jeffrey
camp.
points out something that's important that's not related to me bashing hippies, to me punching hippies. And that is that the President of the United States owns stock in Energy Transfer Partners, the builder of the North Dakota pipeline.
Yes, so does the incoming or would-be energy secretary. Not that that has anything to do with that, but...
He does. Rick Perry is on the board.
Yeah. By the way, you know what would make an interesting
But there are no
compilation?
conflicts of interest for a president.
No. I was thinking it might be an interesting thing to compile the records of the. I'm not certain that all of the cabinet members have the same thing going on, but to the extent that several of them are extraordinarily wealthy people, it's probably easy to track down something similar. But it occurred to me, like, again, there may be no ways to make dents in the thinking of his most fervent middle American Rust Belt red voting blue collar worker white voters. But I do wonder occasionally whether it might have made a difference or might make a difference going forward if you were able to demonstrate the cabinet is actually full of people who they are in fact figures that these guys recognize as evildoers. I mean, these are the bosses that kill their workers. That concern them. They may not be willing to fight them as a unionized group necessarily, but they understand that sort of thing. I mean, I'm thinking like, again, Wilbur Ross and his killing miners at the Sago mine. But I thought back to even the construction of Trump Tower. I mean, there were a couple of construction workers killed and a lot of them injured by failure to protect them from the asbestos they were removing and to give them proper protection for other hazards. People fell off the thing and because there were no safety harnesses and died. I did wonder about that, and I bet that there's a number of people, since they're all billionaires, they're almost all invested in something that made them rich by ignoring the safety of the people who worked for them, and they killed them. And that's something that sort of resonates with these guys. Hey, the whole cabinet is full of, awful bosses that kill workers for money. I know that person. I hate that person. Why don't I hate these? I'm not sure. But yeah, that's sort of beside the point. But yeah, I don't know.
Why don't they hate them? Because they don't hate them.
Yeah. Why do they never hate them enough?
It's an old running saw for me. White working class doesn't care about none of this stuff. Those were race-based appeals. Yeah. They voted because they were frightened that the country was no longer, in their view, controlled by white people, which is actually laughable. Yeah. To be honest with you, but that's how they felt, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. Yes, I'm calling that the middle of nowhere. I'm a coastal elite. Mm-hmm. You can. I'm not running for office, so I'll say it the way Trump feels it.
Yeah, he tells it like it is. Everybody, you should run for office. There you go.
I should run for office. They don't care about these. They certainly don't care about environmental. This isn't creating any jobs for anybody in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or Michigan, and they don't care about any of that stuff. That's actually a theme of mine, is trying to really understand what's going to appeal to white working class voters and everybody. The economic anxiety message. Mm-hmm. There was a story in the Washington Post, I believe, about a county in Ohio that they did the cab driver thing, I call it, where they do anecdotal. Okay, right. Said, well, the jobs, blah, blah, blah. Do you know that when Obama was president, that county had risen because of the Bush collapse at the end of his administration to a 20% unemployment rate. Hmm. In 2016, when they went to vote, 8 years after Obama, their unemployment rate was 5%.
Hellhole. Terrible.
And they flopped from voting for Obama to voting for Trump because of, quote, economic anxiety, according to the story.
Yes. Well,
that's not, jobs were unstable. Let me not wrap it in anything but plain paper. That's a lie. That's not why they moved away. They moved away because they felt white people weren't getting a fair shake.
I guess.
It's just the way it is. And it's the stupidest things. I'll give you one example. You tell me. You tell me if you think this would have helped Hillary Clinton in her campaign in white working class enclaves in the Rust Belt. Colin Kaepernick refused to stand for the national anthem.
Yes.
Suppose Hillary Clinton had decided she was going to assist a soldier, Colin Kaepernick, and say she strongly disagreed, thinks this is outrageous, we're a great country, we've got a lot of work to do, but this is not what you do, yada, yada. Suppose she would have spent 3 or 4 days on the trail doing that. Think it would have helped her with white working class voters?
I have my doubts.
I don't. I think it would have.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you why.
All right.
Because that's what they wanted to hear. That's what Trump told them about everything.
I think it might have helped perhaps earlier on. I don't know. I feel like it would have been at that point, like late in the campaign, would have been like, oh, she's come to tell us what she thinks we want to hear. Hey, well.
You're right. Maybe you have to be. That's a great point. Bill Clinton's sister soldiered early in 1992. This is repugnant stuff, I'm saying, for political tactics. But that's the question I honestly think we have before us. How much repugnance are we going to tolerate if to win white working class voters? I just don't know that people, there's this easy solution. $15 an hour minimum wage.
Okay.
Well, Donald Trump wasn't for the $15 an hour minimum wage.
No.
Hillary Clinton was. So don't tell me that's why they went for Trump.
No, that certainly wasn't why they went for Trump.
Okay, now
you're having
you
people
want to
argue.
point to immigration? Yes, they liked his stance on immigration. They hate Mexico.
Yes.
Trade, look, trade is one of those issues that I think we as Democrats, this is my personal opinion, and most people in my party disagree with me. You probably disagree with me. I think we are mindless on trade policy.
I don't disagree that we're mindless.
NAFTA is not bad. TPP would not have been bad. It would not have hurt working. I mean, you know the stories. You've read the data.
Yeah.
It's automation. It's productivity gains that cost good pay, good paying manufacturing jobs. You can't. You want to stop that? You got to become a Luddite and say we're against automation. We're against technological advancement.
All right, I will.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going on and on, but I'm going to just. Someone pointed out to the Forgotten Man speech.
Yes.
Of 1932 by Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt, in that speech, notes that 80, what was it? It wasn't 80. Maybe it was 50% of the country was rural and had connections to agriculture, farming.
Yeah.
That's not our country anymore.
Not today.
And we have an anachronistic and undemocratic system established by our Constitution that has distorted beyond recognition democracy in this country. We're talking about the Electoral College, the Senate, and frankly, the way we draw congressional districts.
Yes, true.
When Democrats win 55% of the vote, but only win 46% of the congressional seats, that's not democracy. It's not working.
Right. Well, yeah, that's certainly true, and it's correct to point out that that's rooted in a founding in an agricultural rural society that doesn't exist in the same way anymore.
Right. Well, that's fine, but the way the way we're structured now.
Yeah.
Those voters have inordinate say.
Right, but they of course have been convinced that they have none.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, they say and believe a lot of things, and the media encourages it, and they ignores the undemocratic nature of our national elections.
Yeah. It is kind of a bizarre thing. I mean, it occurred to me listening, such as I did anyway, to the inaugural speech about, you're not going to be ignored and yada yada, and the whole theme being all of the middle America was ignored, the coastal elites, only this, that, and the other thing. We're installing you having been elected with a 3 million vote deficit Because what again? Who's ignored?
Exactly.
What are you talking about? You'll never be ignored again. I'm looking at you. You're there. You lost overwhelmingly, but you're being inaugurated because the system says we can't ignore them. Now, we may be ignoring them at the policy-making level, which is why they were so angry and elected this ignoramus as a result. I'll show you about being a technocrat. I'm going to send you the most ridiculously dangerous incompetent you ever encountered. Okay? We'll take them. We have to, because we pay attention to them.
I'll give credit to these voters. They didn't care about these pipelines, and they really do agree with Trump on immigration, and they think trade is horrible, and they think globalization can be stopped by covering it with their hand. And I think they're getting what they voted for. I mean, they didn't care that he's incompetent, but he justified, he vindicated their view that they're getting the short end of the stick as white men, particularly.
Yeah,
they're getting what they bargained for. I think that and what people are having a hard time, particularly the media, dealing with is that this is what they wanted. It wasn't just they didn't like Hillary. Yeah, they didn't like Hillary, but they liked what Trump was saying. They liked the way he said it.
Yep, pretty much.
So how do you win that voter? I don't think you do.
Yeah, maybe not. Luckily,
Trump loses that vote is how you can win. And that's the beauty, of course, of running elections against the sitting president. You collect all the I'm against what he did voters.
Yeah. Well, if we can find them and reach them. Yeah. Right. Maybe the next couple of years has to be, I don't know how you exactly frame this, but there probably needs to be some discussion of, hey, listen, when the election comes around, wink, wink, we're going to have to,
Well, I do think that one of the things where I do agree with all the reformers of the party, in an election like the one coming up, we need credible candidates in as many races as possible simply to be able to take advantage of a wave if it comes.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, that's just basic. So that, to me, I don't know about messaging and organizing and da-da-da-da. Those all sound good. I'm not trying to poo-poo them. But job number one has to be get as many credible people who might win an election in as many races as possible so that if that wave develops, you're there to catch it.
Yeah. Well, you should always be prepared for that. I'm amazed that we're not.
Well, that's a longer-term organization situation, certainly. But the short-term argument I'm making is that that's if somebody wants to do something that's important for 2018, go rustle up decent candidates who are willing to look. It may not come, so you might get wiped out, or you might lose and have wasted a year and a half of your life, and that's a big sacrifice. Like running for office. We make fun of these politicians, and some of them are worthy of it. But at least from our perspective, the coastal elite perspective, there's a bit of a sacrifice in doing these things.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, certainly the highest end, a guy like Obama or even a guy like Clinton or many of our great senators, and some of them are great. They could have just cashed in and gone into business and done a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And lived a nice, wealthy life. So, that's the other part of it. But at any rate, I think that how do you react to I'm actually very curious to see the reactions to this pipeline executive orders.
Well, we'll see, and we'll see how things go, and what I'm curious about just how life is going to go for those who are camped out there. I feel bad for them.
For Trump's not going to care. They're going to bash their heads in, and he's going to say, "Great, about. Congratulations."
Yeah, and I'm afraid that might be true.
You have to, in some respects. Again, you look to the most successful active sort of movement of our time, certainly our generation, and it was the civil rights movement. And remember the first steps they took before the grassroots activism was actually in the courts. The NAACP Legal Defense Fund was, frankly, the spear up until, say, 1944 in Rosa Parks, when it became more activist than litigious. And that's, not sure how, someone's going to have a lot of courage and have a lot of patience. From 1954, it took 10 years to get the passing of the Civil Rights Act, right?
Yeah. That is, well, yeah. I mean, we forget how. I assume timelines on everything seem to be accelerated these days. Just
certainly, the same-sex marriage movement makes it seem easier. But remember that movement as well, though, David.
Yeah,
it was largely litigious too.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Kennedy sparked the revolution with the fifth vote. Now, that was smart lawyering, knowing you had because of his decisions on gay rights issues in the past, you sort of felt that if you present the case properly and create the right atmosphere, he was ready to go. And that was your fifth vote. That is more akin to the fight up to Brown v. Board. And I don't know what's next. I guess, again, I'm not frankly well versed in all gay rights issues. So perhaps there's more of the activism that we saw from the civil rights movement from, let's say, the next 10-year period, the 54 to 64, 65. I don't know. Now, environmentalists, I don't know what they're going to do after today. Trump doesn't care about any of this. I think in some ways he'll welcome those protests.
Yeah, maybe they may have to find their way in similar fashion through the courts. I mean, certainly the public opinion generally on the overarching environmental issues is very favorable. So,
sure.
Maybe now's the time to be doing this in court rather than through activism. But
I don't know. I don't know what this. I mean, there's
well, maybe we should pick up the weapon I laid down as a half a joke during the campaign. I watched the North Dakota pipeline protesters in particular standing in the way and putting on the perfect activist demonstration in offering Native American prayer in the path of the pipeline, and only to be beaten down by police. But I wondered, where's Hobby Lobby now? People exercising their religious freedom, being and saying this is religiously important, sacred ground here. This is part of our religious heritage, and the idea of rolling over us in the name of governmental progress. I mean, last year we were tied up in knots about whether people could or couldn't bake cakes, or whether a hobby store could have a religion. And even filling out paperwork is sacrilege. And we actually went that far through the courts. Maybe that's the thing to pick up and leverage. If you were serious about this, of course they weren't, because we meant Christians, not weirdos. That is to say, non-Christians. But to the extent that that's embarrassing to members of the court that you're in front of, I guess that's a pressure point. Maybe that's where it goes with environmentalists and litigation. But I can't imagine it. I don't know. In the age of Trump, it's difficult to imagine it succeeding, or them not bulldozing you anyway, even if they lose. At any rate, okay. Well, there's plenty more to shoehorn into today's show, besides guessing where will the next mega trend go, since I can't do it.
Well, I just sent you a tweet that you might want to put some historic context in.
Is it Hatch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I saw somebody else comment on this earlier. I worry about what my colleagues on the other side are doing to the Senate. That's Hatch on Democratic tactics in confirmation hearings. I did see somebody send a picture and a quote where, basically he was saying, I've never seen this kind of outrageous obstructionism before. They're very upset that the nominees are having hearings and that people are voting on them, apparently. They're used to cabinets being approved by unanimous consent on day one, which has never really happened. But
well, I mean, whether it has or hasn't.
I mean, it has in cases, not entire cabinets, but certainly 5, 6, 7 people go through very quickly on day one.
Nominate people who are qualified.
Nominate people who we've heard of, who we know who the hell they are, they have some experience, and finish your homework. Fill out the paperwork. You can't come to these. That's the thing. To me, the punishment should just be, I don't care what I find out in the paperwork. The fact that you didn't fill it out means I don't give a good goddamn when you want to start this job. It's never happening. Period. But okay, fine. You can force them through. Fine, do it. You're going to slog every hour out of this. I'm going to make this take months because you didn't do your homework. You can't come to the committee and say, yeah, I might have conflicts of interest. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I might possibly be, I don't know, an illegal immigrant for that matter. I'm not going to tell you. I'm just not filling out the paperwork because I'm rich. Shut up. No. Come on.
Yeah. What's amazing as well is none of the undersecretaries, apparently from almost any department, have been named and sent to the Senate for confirmation. Because there's I forget how many, 300 and something, Senate confirmable posts. I think it's that.
In terms of secretaries and undersecretaries and things like that, yes, there's many, many hundreds more beyond that. But even if you were just to be filling the flagship departments, it's several hundred. Yeah.
And he hasn't even sent nominees.
No, he has no idea. He's in many cases, he just finished up. I think he just finally found an agriculture nominee. Maybe the day of his inauguration or the day before. He's way behind.
He found a guy named Purdue and said, chicken, agriculture, good enough. Go.
That could be it. Right?
I mean, that was the joke, and frankly, it's believable.
Right.
I mean, people made the joke about Mattis. He picked him because of his nickname.
Right.
That's not inconceivable.
He nominated Anthony Michael Hall for his portrayal of Farmer Ted.
Look, here's a guy who, after watching some wrestling event where Vince McMahon was, quote, killed, called up Linda McMahon to ask if this is true.
I'm so sorry, Linda.
Okay.
Well, he's a dumb
people
baby.
downplay this. This man is a buffoon.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we don't want our president to be a buffoon, so we're not going to report that he's a buffoon, but he's going to still be a buffoon.
Yes. Well, we're just going to,
we're through the looking glass. The Spicer thing, which I assume you probably discussed at the top of the show. Mm-hmm. Spicer had that incredible thing on Saturday. Was it Saturday or Sunday? I forget. Saturday. And, then he came out and acted a little more normal. I didn't see the actual thing, but, he only had, 5 lies instead of just one big lie out of 20 things he said. And, that's the Sean Spicer I know. He only lies half the time.
Yeah, right. 100% is crazy.
Yeah.
Just
give us a little truth with the lies. And then everyone says, No, seriously, did you see the media's reaction?
Yeah. Though he's much better. Plus he had a suit that was nicer.
He had a better fitting suit.
He's dapper, like the Nazi.
This is, we're on day 4, David.
Yeah.
This is exhausting already.
Yes, it will be, and it will continue to be exhausting. And it's awful.
And wait till we get to things that, the big issues. I mean, what are they going to do on healthcare? I'm not sure. I think nothing for the most part. I think they'll tweak 3 things and say they reformed it or whatever.
It may be.
And of course, these pipeline stuff. This is good. This is the thing that if you actually care about extraterrestrials, he's going to take a crap on everything like that. I don't know what's important because that's not my bailiwick. There's some people I follow and trust on it, but that stuff you're going to get wiped out. He's going to undo. I think. Don't be surprised if if we step out of Kyoto and the Paris Accords.
I would not be. And, to the extent that it would be considered outrageous and give people heart palpitations, Steve Bannon will be all for it. I mean, it won't matter what the policy effect is, just so long as it panics people, he'll be into it.
Right. So, I mean, the other thing, the foreign policy thing is, frankly, who knows where he's at right now. He's picked fights with China, kissed up to Russia, pissed off NATO. Where does all that end? I don't know.
Yeah, no telling.
He's having, I guess, Theresa May on Friday, and Theresa May's playing sort of a Trumpian role over there with her embrace of Brexit, full Brexit, clean Brexit, whatever she calls it. And what, that's embroiled the United Kingdom in tremendous problems. I believe it's going to end up being serious problems.
Yeah.
When Trump decides he's going to, because he's going to have to, I don't think that it's going to work. Oh, you can't, go to Mexico and say I'm undoing NAFTA, so agree to everything I say, or else. Well, they're going to have to say or else. I think that's one of the problems right now for the Mexican president. He really can't agree with anything with Trump right now. He's already in hot water for what he did, which wasn't even anything, and other than a stupidity. I think we're just headed to mess after mess. I don't know how all this turns out. And what about the economy? I don't even know what he's planning.
No, nobody knows. And he's not likely to have anything either, except possibly this infrastructure plan. And we already have indication from some Democrats saying, maybe it would be great. I mean, because we like the idea of building infrastructure. It's just that it's as a public project, yes. As a, private
privatization project,
no. but I understand. I saw something today, and I didn't put it aside because there's so much more we have to get to. But and it's so early in the process. But I understand that there are some Democrats who were offering what they were calling or what they were styling a Trump type or Trump style, as a matter of fact, they used the same word twice, Trump style infrastructure project. Like, if this is the way to get infrastructure done, well, okay, it's not our preferred method, but maybe a different package of projects with a different mix of public-private partnership. But just, I don't know, don't cede anything to him. I don't think he can get the one he wants done. It's not possible.
It's just bad negotiation anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, again, suppose that's something you would live with. And you said, well, the downside is less than the upside. You can't put that on the table first. That's your compromise position. It's just...
I don't know. I don't know enough about it to evaluate it.
From the reverse side, President Obama, God bless him, great president. By the end, he was ready to go. But the first year, his negotiations were terrible.
Yeah.
They just weren't good. He kept thinking, he believed his own press to some degree about how he was going to unify everything.
Yeah, well, maybe there's some way to exploit that for Trump. Trump certainly believes his own press and thinks he's a great negotiator, but it's actually a terrible one.
He's really, his style of negotiation is lose all my money, have the banks on the hook. They could, call the loans on me and bankrupt me, but then what are they going to get? So let me tell you what's better for you. And, banks are rational beings, and they don't care that Trump's a liar. They're trying to make the most money they can. So they played it wrong.
Yeah.
Of course, at the end of the day, that's how he became president. If they had called all their loans and bankrupted him, that would have been that, and we'd never hear from Trump again. But
we can all unify on blaming big banks for Trump, then.
Again, it's a blame, yes, in a sense, but they were doing what banks do. The old saying is true. It's if you owe the bank a lot of money, you want to owe them a lot of money.
Yeah, I remember.
So that's how we ended up here. I don't know. We just, in terms of here's frankly the way I should be, and including the stimulus discussion you just had. What we need to do is, Mitch McConnell is always pilloried for what he said at the beginning of the Obama administration. Stop him as much as possible. Don't work with him. Politically speaking, that was the right move.
Yeah.
Now, was it necessarily the best long-term play? But maybe not. I don't know where you'd want the Republican Party to go.
It is the best long-term play if we don't do the same thing to him now.
Right. Well, if we let him get away with it, I mean, but I hope and I believe everybody in the country views Obama and Trump as not in the same category. Mm-hmm. Again, I'll be generous. Suppose John Kasich was the Republican nominee and just won the election. It would just be a different thing. Listen, we'd be fighting like crazy over all sorts of real issues.
Yes.
But John Kasich isn't nuts.
Not that way.
He's not good, but he's not nuts. So to me, the only metric for what we do is, what does it do for 2018 so we get the power to stop Trump? We need one of the houses of Congress.
Yes.
We need one of the houses of Congress, period, end of story. You can hamstring a president, at least on domestic policy, if you control one of the houses of Congress, right?
Yes. If he's going to be a president and not a dictator.
Well, listen, if he abolishes Congress, then all bets are off.
Yes,
we actually do need our Second Amendment rights.
Yes. Stockpile. All right.
I mean, is that a possibility? With Trump, anything's a possibility.
I keep putting it out there. I don't know what to tell you. It's hard to predict for a guy who'll literally try or say he'll try anything. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
But let's assume for the moment there will be a relatively fair 2018 election.
Okay.
The one goal
of
everything that's being done everywhere has to be about that.
Sure.
It has to be.
Yeah,
so whatever you do, if you think the stimulus bill is good, but it helps Trump and makes it harder to defeat him in 2018, my calculus is simple. I'll take the short-term pain to be able to beat him in 2018. I'm serious.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that would be my calculation. Others would calculate, but I'm up in 2018, so no.
Well, that's true. You've got to look at it that way. But I would say to them, presuming they're Democrats, understand something. You're really not on the ballot. You are on the ballot, but the president is the main person on the ballot. The midterm elections, particularly the first one, is going to be a referendum on Trump, a referendum on the president of the United States. It happened to Obama in 2010.
Yeah.
And the Republicans had fomented a sufficiently, noxious and toxic situation where they took back the House. Look, presidents always lose in midterms. The one exception was the Bin Laden one of 2002. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the 98 one on impeachment.
Okay, so that's two.
But remember, those are very extreme. Every other one, Reagan 82 lost seats. Reagan 86 lost seats. Right. Bush 90 lost seats. Clinton 94 lost seats. Bush 2006 lost seats. Obama 2010 lost seats. Obama 2014 lost seats. The presidency makes you lose seats. People say, well, look how the shape Obama left the Democratic Party in terms of office holders. Okay, that's a fair point, but let's look at it contextually and how it looks historically. He did a little more poorly than most presidents, but it wasn't completely out of bounds. I mean, presidents lose seats. They lose governorships. They lose representatives. They lose senators because the president becomes everything in our country. It's just the way it is.
Yes.
Let's take advantage of that now, is my point.
I'm willing. That's all I can tell you. All right.
All right. Listen, thanks for letting me rant for 45 minutes. I just took over your show, and you don't even have a cold.
Right. I know. Feel free.
I should hand you back your last 15 minutes of your show so you can make your other points. I'm sure you have a lot to make. Thanks for letting me rant, though.
Okay, no problem. I know everybody needs a chance.
Okay. Now everybody that listens, wait, where's my 45 minutes?
Well, maybe you should do. Well, we may arrange that. I don't know. Why not? The future of the show depends on it. Okay.
All right, David. I'll go back to listening.
Take care. Thanks very much, Armando. Yeah, and we'll keep an eye out for where are these damn executive orders / memos and where do they publish these things so we can figure out what they mean. Okay, so what else do we want to catch up on before closing up shop for the day? There's a bunch of different things, obviously. We had 19. We'll narrow it down to, say, 1 or 2 and hold the rest for the rest of the week. And most of this stuff won't go away. Something I wanted to share with you yesterday prior to the vote on Mike Pompeo, but couldn't fit that in. But now, of course, we're post-Pompeo vote. Now, we weren't going to be able to stop this thing. So the best I can do for you at this point is tell you how terrible things could get under Pompeo. You're stuck with him anyway. And the best person for that usually is Empty Wheel. And she kicked it off yesterday or Sunday with a headline that grabbed me because it's something we've hinted at before, and I think it's important to include back into the conversation now that he's going to be at the head of the CIA. The chief objector in the Senate, the lead in the fight against Pompeo, seems to have shaped up as being Ron Wyden. And he was the one who dragged the nomination vote process out on Pompeo by objecting to simply clearing him on Friday and holding it over until Monday and then getting some debate time and laying out his objections. He laid them out pretty clearly, and I have seen both the Center for Constitutional Rights and Empty Wheel, pretty good company right there, lay out what his objections were. Empty Wheel being the more net rootsy of the bunch and a personal friend, that will stick with her, and I think we've got a lot of Empty Wheel fans out there. Certainly a lot of Center for Constitutional Rights fans too, but she's got a net rootsy way of putting it, right? The problems with Pompeo, it's all in the headline. A willingness to use information on Americans that Russia hacked and shared with Trump. You see what we're getting at here? One of the things we mentioned earlier on in the lifespan of the election during the election on the show, the role of Russians and Russian hacking, and as uncomfortable as discussing it made me. Certainly yesterday, I probably scared the crap out of you with the idea that what if some of Trump's personal bodyguards are in fact either Russian or Russian paid agents. And by the way, we should point out once again, in case you're confused by that or taken aback by that in the same way I have been in saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Remember that there's a curious relationship between mobsters, like actual criminal, organized crime figureheads in the Russian mob and the Russian government. They, in fact, work in many ways hand in glove. They're, at the same time, vicious rivals, and they would kill one another if they could in an instant. But they work together insofar as they can and scratch one another's backs. It's entirely, you think, well, why the Russian government couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, wouldn't dare, what have you, plant a mole in President Trump's personal protection force. Well, it wouldn't work that way. It would be Russian mobsters, as we discussed yesterday, but they have a personal working relationship with Vladimir Putin, who uses them to do extra legal things all the time. What about but this, in fact, we've discussed even before we were talking about Trump and Russia and bodyguards and mobsters. We certainly talked about, well, what about if Trump now as president wanted to use information or get hold of information or find ways to get information about Americans that constitutionally the government wouldn't be able to collect and give to him. Well, what if a third party? We've discussed this for a long time, even before Trump and Russia or the election campaign or anything, about the possibility of the United States government using third-party providers of information and saying, all it says is the Constitution says the government can't collect this on you, but if Google collects it on you and we buy it from Google or force Google somehow to give it to us, maybe that even isn't an illegal collection of information. Worse still, what if it's somebody from outside the country who's not even beholden to our system in any way whatsoever does it? And what if they're non-governmental on top of that? And what if they're career criminals on top of that? Well, they wouldn't do it because they would be in trouble with their own government. Well, what if they don't give a flying F about what their government has to say? What if they're organized crime figures? So what about all of this? What does Marcy have to say on this? On Friday, the Senate confirmed the first two of President Trump's nominees, Mattis and Kelly, right? But it did not confirm the third nominee slotted for that day, Mike Pompeo, in part because the nomination was not dealt with in regular fashion in the Senate Intelligence Committee, which did not vote out his nomination. Ron Wyden managed to force Mitch McConnell to hold 6 hours of debate tomorrow, that would have been yesterday, on his nomination. And guess what? It was only 3 hours of debate. But he asked for 6 and got it. They just yielded back 3 of them because no one had anything to say but him. Wyden had suggested, we need to have more debate because Pompeo hasn't answered all the questions posed to him. And it's true that Wyden has concerns about the following issues, but perhaps most of all, Wyden's questions suggest he is concerned that the Trump administration will use information the Russians hacked against Americans. In follow-up questions posed to Pompeo, Wyden expressed concerns about his, bullet points here, enthusiasm for bulk collections of lifestyle information on Americans, and Wyden talked extensively about that last night. Lifestyle information, like literally consumer style information. What if Amazon has a record of everything you've bought from them? Why couldn't the CIA have that? Apparently that's like in bounds for him. Willingness to have the CIA engage, the CIA, by the way, against Americans, engage in activities the ambassador or other chief of mission disagrees with. That would be foreign activity, of course. Squirminess, about when the CIA can kill a person, a U.S. person. Apparently didn't get any kind of answers on these things. Dodginess on classifying torture information that reveals illegal, embarrassing, competitive, or otherwise unclassified information. And Marcy continues here. But as I said, Wyden's chief concern appears to be that Pompeo will use information the Russians have or will give the Trump administration against Americans. Can't get it because Constitution? Ask Russians to take it. And then, I don't know, it just showed up on my doorstep. I didn't collect it. That's the point. The enthusiasm for bulk collections on the lifestyle information on Americans, by the way, a little bit more detail on that, on each of these bullet points in here. We'll see if we can squeeze it all in. A big point of concern for Wyden and Martin Heinrich throughout Pompeo's confirmation process is this op-ed, and it's linked herein, that he wrote at the beginning of last year, based in part on the fact that the intelligence community didn't find the Tashfeen Malik's anti-American statements on non-public social media, and in part on a demonstrably false claim that if the intelligence community didn't find the Garland attackers beforehand, in reality, the FBI was cheering them on. Pompeo argued, we need to collect still more data. Congress should pass a law reestablishing collection of all metadata and combining it with publicly available financial and lifestyle information into a comprehensive, searchable database, he wrote. That is to say, Congress should allow collection of all the data that we can get financially, commercially, publicly, social media, and have a gigantic searchable database of all information that we can gather on everybody in America. Really? Pompeo has dodged questions about precisely what lifestyle information he wants to collect, though it surely includes Twitter's fire hose of data. And sadly, he repeatedly pointed to executive orders in his answers, and the new executive order 12333, sharing rules, permit the access of public information, which can include information from data brokers, though Pompeo claims ignorance of what he might want to use. So while Wyden is concerned that Pompeo will start dragnetting Americans, sadly, he has been enabled to do so by one of the last things Obama did. Yes, still puzzling. What about the willingness to have the CIA engage in activities that the ambassador or other chief of mission disagrees with? Another concern Wyden raised pertains to disagreements between the chief of mission, the top diplomat in the country, and the CIA station chief. This has been an issue in the past, at least as it pertains to drone strikes in Pakistan and the torture program, where the ambassador was either not informed of or not properly consulted on CIA activities within that country. When asked a yes or no question about whether he would permit the CIA to conduct activities even while an outstanding disagreement remained, Pompeo refused to answer, stating instead that he would seek an expeditious decision from the president. Effectively, he suggested if we were losing a disagreement with state, he'd get Trump to override state. Wyden, who has long sought guidelines on when the U.S. can kill an American citizen, returned to pre-hearing questions on this topic after citing the drone rulebook requirement that the DOJ be involved before taking action against a U.S. person. He asked whether Pompeo agreed with the requirement. Pompeo basically said the U.S., quote, must consider an American citizen's constitutional rights prior to targeting him, and CIA attorneys frequently consult with DOJ, though he left open the possibility of relying on less formal analysis. Ultimately, Pompeo dodged laying out any additional checks he'd follow before killing an American. Wyden asked Pompeo if he disagreed with the prohibitions on classifying information to 1, conceal violations of law, inefficiency, or administrative error, or 2, prevent embarrassment to a person, organization, or agency, or 3, restrain competition, or 4, prevent or delay the release of information that does not require protection in the interest of national security for some other reason. Prohibitions that existed in Clinton's, George W. Bush's, and Obama's executive offices and executive orders on classified information. Pompeo said he did not. However, immediately in that context, Wyden asked about the torture report, and Pompeo dodged all questions about declassifying the torture report. And then finally, what about this stuff? And this stuff we don't even have time for the headline stuff anymore. But as I said, she says, Wyden's persistent concerns in his post-hearing questions pertain to whether and how Pompeo would be willing to cooperate with Russians, raising a Pompeo hearing comment that if a foreign partner gave the CIA information on U.S. persons independently, whatever that might mean, it might be appropriate for CIA to collect that information in bulk. Wyden raised Trump's encouragement of Russian hacking and asked what circumstances would make foreign collections so improper that CIA should not receive such information. Pompeo's response, information obtained through such egregious conduct may be appropriate for the CIA to use or disseminate. Wyden asked for the conditions under which he would do that. Of course, Pompeo at that point begins to freak out and has no answers. And so it would seem, long story short, and I had to make it even shorter than I anticipated, apparently it would be perfectly in line with Mike Pompeo's understanding of the CIA's role in the United States of America to collect information that would otherwise have been unconstitutional to collect just so long as it's done by, a foreign power. Russia, in particular. Does that concern anybody? Not 14 or 15 Democrats who decided it was more important to have the optics of having cooperated with the new president on something, anything, in the first couple days of his administration. Wow. And there were some real surprises among those voters, too. Of course, I have talked a little bit longer than I anticipated, and I can't give you the rundown on what you're going to hear next on the After Show. I can say only this. All the things we didn't get to that are important and interesting to you are coming up next on the After Show.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
I can only squeeze in this highlight. You have to hear about this one. South Dakota lawmakers have declared a state of emergency to force the repeal of the voter-imposed ethics law decided on the November ballot. Of course, all of that, plus a visit with Chris Reeves, always interesting, fascinating stuff as usual on the After Show with Wink and Justice next.